Okay, Ted Milner's saying he's having the same issue. Oh, boy.
Evan, why don't you go on mute, camera and audio, and deal with the people who are having trouble getting in, and we can get started. And then when they come in, hopefully that they get to come in, we can circle back and catch them up.
Okay, well, I will do that. I will see to Dave. So I will see you guys in a few minutes. Hopefully I'll bring these other guys in. Thank you.
I'm not sure who was going to be the one person put on the spotlight to be introduced because all the rest of us know each other. But let's go ahead anyway. Maybe we'll have some time to do some meet and greet later on. So my expectation for today was to orient you all to this framework document that I put together. Hopefully you've had a chance to review it and look at it and you understood it. But if not, then maybe this is the moment for that. And then potentially we can actually start to work through it. Maybe an actual set of additions, or maybe more of a test run, practice run to kind of prove that A, it works, and B, we're understanding it in either case. Does anyone else have any expectations for today that are different from what I said? Add-ons? Conflicts? Okay. All right. And it probably shouldn't take too long to do my orientation, so we'll have time in the back half to do some improv if we need to. All right. So if you've had a chance to look at this, you'll see that I broke this down into, well, I'll start at a higher level. My approach here was to try and make it very clear what are the elemental building blocks of what we're calling brown bag. It may or may not be called that in the future, but just as a name, we have to call it something. So this experiential learning by doing media creation educational program, we'll just call it brown bag for the moment. Irrespective of its name, the way it's been conceived for quite some time now is it comprises a number of different elements. And those elements, some of them are completely necessary and we can't do it without it. And then other ones can be sort of added on or not added on as necessary. Each of those elements can be provided. Okay, let me start again. So with the sense of that the program is these elements, and that's what I have under column C, description. B is the name of the elements, and then C is the description of them. Brown bag is something that is intended to be put together by sort of a coalition of partners. I'm calling a partner an organization, but it may or may not be literally an organization, but by and large, it's typically something like an organization. We are expecting each organization to bring something to the table. And so I thought, let's match that up with the elements. And each organization, as a result of participating, will get some value out of it. And once again, they can get a value based on one of these elements. Of course, we can add an element, we can take elements away as we see fit. These are the ones that I have considered so far. So now when we look at the spreadsheet, you can see columns B, C, and D are brown bag. They are the elements. Each row is a particular element. And then columns E, F, G, H, et cetera, all the way over, represents each organization. So for example, I have some stuff from Chase in here. This is just examples. I'm speaking for them. It's not anything that they've agreed to necessarily. But each organization has a column E, what they can provide, and it matches up to a particular row, a particular element. And then column F, the second column for each organization, the value that they would be looking to receive as a result of their participation. So we can go through this in a little more granular detail, but let me pause here and ask, any confusion, any questions?
Okay, and if I may, Dave, two other people have joined the call. In the chat box, if you can post the Google Doc again. I don't know if they would be able to access it if they weren't on the chat at the time you did it. So if you can put the chat, the Google Doc back in the chat for Ted and for Rick Presley. And for Rick, if you can join us via video, because some of us have never seen your face before. And I know, Terrence, you're probably driving, so. And I know, Jay, you're joining us by the grace of. Okay.
Right. So far so good. Yeah. Everybody. Great. So what I'll do now is I'll go through each row, each element, and we can talk about that. And then you can consider as we go along, if you are a representative of an organization, potentially which one of these things work for you, both on the what to bring to the table and what to receive as a result of the investment. And otherwise, you can also just consider, are these the right elements? Are we missing elements? Have we overstated some elements, et cetera? So again, this is all sort of the beginning thinking, but my thought overall was to do it in this sort of tactical framework, right? You can start to see how we're getting all the Lego pieces aligned and starting to build with them, where in the past we've had a lot of wonderful visionary discussions, but it's been a little hard to get down to brass tacks, to be cliche. All right, so starting on row 3 under elements, obviously we need students, for lack of a better word, they're participants, the humans that will enter into this program and leave changed, improved, and educated in whatever the program is educating them in. We'll talk about that. But a school is nothing without students. So obviously this is the people who are going to be doing the learning. Similarly, obviously, we need some people to teach them. Sometimes we call them mentors, sometimes we call them teachers. They're at least generically teachers, right? So these are absolutely the basics. We need students, we need teachers. Potentially, we could have people who would come in, and the teachers in this particular row 4 are ones who are dedicated for some duration, let's say end to end for the program, to keep it simple. Wouldn't have to literally necessarily be that, but they are there for some amount of time, more than just one day. Of course, we could have guest mentors or teachers who would come in more or less one time. But they wouldn't be responsible on an ongoing basis. They would just be responsible for a 2-hour presentation. So you'll see here that I have some rows in green. The green rows are the ones we absolutely have to have. If it's not shaded in green, then we can survive without it.
Right. Dave, can I make a suggestion? I just shared the screen for you. Is it possible for you to share your screen?
Sure. All right. Okay. Are you seeing my screen?
Thank you. Yeah, I think can anybody not see the screen? I think we're good.
Follow along on the screen, follow along on your own as you see fit. All right, so guest mentors. Obviously, row 6, we need a curriculum, syllabus, or lesson plan. We need planned out ahead of time what the learning program will look like when you look at it on a piece of paper. Day 1, day 2, day 3, lesson 1, lesson 2, lesson 3, whatever that ends up looking like. That has to be designed, is the word that I'm using, ahead of time, so that there's no surprises and everyone who is participating knows what they're getting into. So to me, this is one of the most critical ones. Obviously, we can't do it without students, we can't do it without teachers, and we have to have an it. This is the it. This is what the teachers will run the students through. Certification, validation, row 7. I think it would be ideal if there was some sort of validation at the end of the syllabus. Maybe it's in the middle, maybe it's at the end, but there's something that proves that this entire program met certain recognized standards. And that's something we can talk about. What does that look like? What are those standards? In a way, this is actually part of the curriculum design in my mind, but I've called it out as a separate element because it's so important. Row 8, one of the things we're looking at having this do, as well as learning how to create media by creating media, this should be focused on job placement, career advancement. So an aspect of this would be some lessons, modules, opportunities that somehow prepare the students for exploring job opportunities and actually, hopefully, even get them into, I mean, let's keep it simple, it gets them some interviews. It gets them face-to-face interviews for actual open opportunities. Now, this is not a must-have, at least in my mind. I didn't put this as a green, but it could be. But I think this is one of the things that we are seeing that this would be about. Number 9, row 9, equipment. If we're going to be making media, we need things to make media with. We're not talking about, charcoal drawings on pieces of paper. And even then, we would need charcoal and pieces of paper, maybe a bowl of fruit to sketch or something like that. So here we're talking obviously about digital media, moving image media, internet, etc. So we need these tools. We need cameras, we need lights, we need software, etc., etc. We need a physical plant, and I say physical, but it could potentially be virtual. But we need the walls and roof of the school. So whether this is literally a room somewhere, potentially at Chase, or it's a cloud service that allows the creation of virtual classrooms. In any case, we need the locale. As a result of, this is row 11, as a result of learning to make media by making media, some media will be made. So one of the things that's going to happen as a result of this is the program will output content. The students, guided by teachers using equipment, following a curriculum plan, will create content. This content in and of itself is not super important necessarily. It could easily just be the exercises that they do. It could maybe stop at the point of portfolio pieces. Okay, so I was involved with this and this is in my portfolio. But a lot of the value of Brown Bag is that this content can be created more or less on demand and can actually have an impact beyond the creation of it. Content can be shown to audiences, and we'll get into that momentarily. But that's why this is called out here. Just by its nature, there will be content created, but we can sort of lean into getting value as a result of the content. It might be valuable for some of the participants. So as we drill into the content itself, this output content, row 12, it's going to be about things. And we can determine what these things are about. In fact, making media, you can make media about whatever you want. As a result of working with different organizations and partners, maybe there's a need for this media to be about something in particular. So let's just take low-hanging fruit. If one of the aspects of this program is about career advancement, row 8, potentially the content can be about that. So even as the students are learning to make media and getting ready to enter the media making industry, the content they make can be about getting prepared to enter any employment field, right? Just an example, but in addition to everything else, there's a determination of what this content can be. The content can in fact be crafted to meet the needs of some of the organizations. So potentially an organization is, let's say, putting cameras and equipment on the table, but they say, well, we would really like the content to be about such and such. So it becomes a little bit of a sponsorship potentially. But but again, it's important to say at some point, and maybe it's something that the students actually do, right? They learn to act as content creators by working with people who are asking them to create a certain type or topics of content, and then they respond to that. Please feel free to break in at any time. I'm sort of on a roll, so I won't be pausing necessarily, but feel free to interrupt. Row 13, the participants and events of the content. So one of the things that Dakar has had success with in the past was creating content that was created at or around an event. So for example, attending a conference, a media conference, and then shooting a panel or taking some panelists who are involved in a given panel and bringing them to a separate room and doing like a mini panel and shooting them there. So this is a great way to get people, like sort of a critical mass of people who are going to be within the content itself. But clearly topics is one thing, right? Row 12, what's it going to be about? Row 13 is how is it about that? Like, what can we actually point the cameras at? Well, we're going to point it at people and we're going to point it at things. So finding these people, finding the places where we could find those people, maybe that's an event, anything like that. An event could be a conference, it could be a parade. It could be something that's created or initiated by the program itself, or it could be something that is created and is happening anyway, but is under the aegis of one of the organizations. But it's just something to consider because it's a very time and cost effective way of getting people who speak to the topics, these things. Okay. Moving on to 14. So this is content and it can be shown to people. So potentially there is value and potentially it's something that an organization, a participating partner organization would be interested in, is that the content itself can be shown to particular audiences. So let's say that LACC, as an example, they have an audience of all of their students who can be reached by closed circuit TV or something like that. And they would be interested in exchange for some value that they bring to the table. They would be interested in content about preparing for entering the media job market industry. I didn't say that very well, but the idea here being that the understanding of the audience for this content. Remember I said earlier, this content could just go straight into a portfolio and it's never shown outside of the context of Brown Bag, the classroom. But we're thinking a little bigger that in fact, the content would be of such quality that it would have value to be broadcast. It doesn't literally have to be broadcast. It could be webcast, it could be closed circuit cast, but that's something to consider. It's something that we have heard in the past from potential partners that they would be interested in supporting the content if it was distributed to their audiences. Row 15 is the actual methods of distribution. If we have an audience, what does it take to get in front of them, right? So as I said before a couple of times, if these are not portfolio pieces, that is, they come off of the editing bays and they go straight into each individual student's website, their portfolio website. If it's going to go to audiences, it has to go to them somehow. And that's a little piece of infrastructure that has to be accounted for. Closed circuit TV, website, web servers, social media, whatever it is that is going to get it in front of row 14, the audiences has to be determined. Row 16, calling this out specifically, though it's been hinted at in the previous few rows, a strict participation play from an organization where they more or less bring money to the table and they say, I want my name and I want the content to be about what I want it to be about. And so, they act as sponsors. Sponsors get to call the shots in return for making the shots themselves possible, right? They bring money to the table so you can make the show, and the show is made to meet the needs of the sponsor. answer. And then finally, row 17, irrespective of calling the shots, all the rows above are like bringing something tangible to the table. Tangible is maybe not the right word. Something that is a thing in and of itself, a camera, a room, a person. Potentially row 17 is just strictly, I can bring money, or I can bring something that is a little more of a liquid value to the table, and then in return for any of the previous rows. So I'll pause there for having run through the elements. Again, does this make sense? Is this confusing? Is there anything missing?
I have a question. Do we have the timeline that this will be, what the duration is? Is it 8 weeks, 16 weeks, 12 weeks? So then we know then that we have the modules that we need to create for that timeline? And we have
Row
the
6, I think, would be where we would talk about timelines. So the curriculum in and of itself, to define a curriculum and design a curriculum, one of the things you design it. One of the aspects of that, the sub aspects, is of course the timeline, right? Curriculums begin and end. Maybe they're repeatable, right? Every quarter, every week, every whatever. But absolutely the duration, to me, is part of curriculum design.
Dave, just on the, sorry, do you prefer Dave or David?
Doesn't matter. Whatever works for you.
I just want to toss in there. It's, I think for a lot of faculty, much easier to create or folks who are working on curriculum if they have that timeline set that they can work within, because it'll dictate what they can fit in there or not, and then work from that way. And on our end of the CSUEA, that would be really helpful, as well as a number of students and a number of faculty that you need, or people who are going to be instructing.
And then how are we getting the students? Is that where you'll come in and help, David, as I believe Santa Monica will be the pilot campus?
Yeah, well, that is in discussion. I guess we want to get, I shared it with a couple of my colleagues, and I guess they need a better overview of how it's going to work. And I think I'm going to have to share this video with them as well, because I know there's a lot of moving parts. But we can probably, start marketing it to students, to certain programs that may benefit from it, to see how we can get the 20. I think, is that what you guys need? 20 people, 20 students?
I threw that number out thinking that it's a small enough number, but that's open for discussion.
Yeah, okay.
Right, and there is a deck where I've put the number 20 in that deck. Obviously, as we bring and qualify people's interests and their partners, we will recruit from those partners who have substantiated that they want participation at some level. I'm looking at this being really focused on folks in Southern California, but if it is virtual, there can be people from other campuses in the state of California. But I'm looking to localize this as much as possible, and looking for people who obviously have some interest in getting an interview in a digital media or some media tech career pathway. So those are the things that we're looking to find an archetype for people who fit the criteria of Southern California, who can get an interview for a job that's probably located somewhere in Southern California.
Okay.
Kevin, have you all discussed if there is going to be, is this going to work as an internship, or is it something they're going to earn credit for? Is it just a kind of one-off thing where they get the certification? What are the realms of that?
Yeah, all things are on the table. Ideally, we're looking to build the portfolio of the student and add on to those portfolios things that could be certification, also course credits. And then, the ideal thing is obviously to see if we can get them an internship that could become some fee for service compensation for working on the project. But again, it's stackable. And I do understand that some people can't get course credit and get paid simultaneously. So on a case-by-case basis, we have 20 students. Every one of them will have an individual plan to build their portfolio, and again, have it mapped towards some way for the interview process to get them prepared for matching those prerequisites for the interview and for the potential hirer to say those are the things we're looking for.
Yeah, one of the things that I'm thinking about is, well, two things. One, CSUEA can absolutely provide credit for anybody if that's a thing that they're interested in. Doesn't matter the school or junior college, high school, college. They end up being 3 units of transferable credit to any college level campus. But on the other side, a lot of our students, we're a majority minority, and a lot of first gen and a lot of folks who are working full time to make ends meet. And so for us, it'll be really important to know the length and duration of this, as well as, I guess, if there has been any discussion of, depending on how long it is, how are these students, if you're looking locally in the area down there in LA and that, are they going to be able to afford to do that and afford to live still while doing that if they're only earning credit and those kind of aspects? So just throwing that piece out there as well.
Well, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think we're only requiring 2 to 3 hours of virtual mentorship, and then whatever element we have, homework, LinkedIn Learning, validation of their work per week. So it's not that much. It seems like it's doable. But Haley, is there a lot of steps to getting them credit if that's the path that we go? And can you help us with that and prepare basically a step-by-step of how we go through that so it's ready?
Absolutely. And our course is really very straightforward. And we try and keep it simple so that people can focus on what they're doing at the job or internship or that realm. But it's open and absolutely we can put together step by step. The only caveat to that is that we offer it spring, summer, and fall. So we'll just have to work out a timeline of how that would work, and just the notification of making sure that we can track the students who are involved in that way.
Perfect. And then I was thinking for network and placement, maybe that's their final, if you will, where we do the speed interviewing at the end, where they get to meet maybe the mentors, or we invite Ted or whomever else we have that are decision makers to get their foot in the door, and have the students interview with them. That could, I mean, that's the dangling the carrot at the end of this 8, 12, 16-week program that we're doing, is to get them the opportunity to interview, right? And insight on how to get in, because it's all about who you know and who knows what you know.
Right. Well, and I would say in a perfect world, the experience would be curriculum. It would be also looking at those students who could be working in a physical environment, pandemic notwithstanding, as well as having some either virtual or physical connectivity with a mentor who is going to be working on the certification, job prep, resume, leading up to an interview or a mock interview. But those are the elements that I envision that will complete the experience. And obviously the physical part of it is working as a team member on a project inside of proposed physical space JP Morgan Chase. And we've looked at Fridays. And I guess, Haley, this is a question. I'm not as familiar with the CSUs. Is there instruction on Fridays for most campuses?
Yes, and it just depends on what realm of classes they're in. Absolutely, they're open on Fridays for classes, yeah.
Okay, so Fridays is what we've looked at as a physical, experiential learning and doing project. This would be the way to integrate something that would allow JP Morgan Chase to really help us. They're offering physical space that we've looked at turning into all of the elements that could allow these people to showcase what they've learned in doing to a production. Some part of it would be, again, building consensus that they are ready to showcase themselves physically, but we could still use the physical space for meeting up and then prepping for the eventual presentation of a production or even something live. So the idea really is to try and get these people in a boot camp experience with everything we can so that they can use the physical space to showcase what they can to the client, JP Morgan Chase. Any questions about the flow of how that looks and feels?
I love the idea. Just a couple things. Remember, we still are, and Haley, I don't know if your campus is 100% open, but for all the community colleges, it's limited on site right now. Most of it is still virtual, and we don't have a foreseen end date. Secondly, we're talking about underserved, those that really need help. A lot of times they will not have the funding or the opportunity to make it to an on-site location. So we need to be, thinking about that student as well. So we've got some challenges.
Yeah. I have a question. Do we have mentors already lined up, potential corporate partners?
Well, the partner that we are pitching is JP Morgan Chase. We do have other partners who have interest, but the ask for the corporate partner will be based on the needs of the individual students or the collective group of students. And those are the things we've had in the past is barriers to get people involved with field trips, job shadowing, is to how to get them transported to those opportunities.
Hold on, Kevin. There were two questions. There were two separate questions there. Before you start talking about transporting, do we have mentors lined up? We have talked to a number of different people, some of them are on this call, who have said that they can either be or source mentors. Some of those mentors are related to organizations. We also have the second question was about organizations. We have been talking for a long time, and again, you're on the call now, with people who represent organizations. Some of them are corporations, some of them are educational organizations who could, among other things, provide mentors, but also could provide not mentors, but some of this other stuff. They could provide the students, they could provide the infrastructure, they could provide the whatever. So the answer is we do not have anyone signed and locked who is ready to start teaching because we don't have a curriculum yet. That's absolutely something we have to do. But we have people who are committed to participating as mentors. And we have organizations who have expressed interest in providing some of these elements. The reason that we're talking about it in the way that we're talking about it now is to get really detailed about what the elements mean, because it just happened. It just happened about 45 seconds ago. It's really easy to start skipping stones between these things. You asked about mentors. Kevin, within 10 seconds, was talking about buses to get to a location that was provided by an organization that maybe would have mentors. So that's awesome. Right. That's the excitement of synergy happening, because this is an exciting project and everything relates to everything else. But I caution us to focus on building blocks and Lego pieces and say, we need this one, I can provide that, or I need that one to look like this, although I can't necessarily provide it, but I can provide something else. And once we have the green ones covered, we can have the other ones, and certainly if the other ones come along, let's start to fill them in. But I urge you to think granularly. Think of the rows, and then think of the columns. What organization do you represent? What organization do you have relationships with, that maybe don't necessarily represent, that you think could match up to one of those rows? The action, maybe we can just step ahead a little bit. The real action comes when let's take a look at column E and F. Chase is just an example here, right? But when we start to fill in row 12 column E, right? So we need a physical plant, row 12. We need a space that this can happen in. Well, Chase has graciously stepped up and said, you can do stuff at our community center. Great, physical plant covered. Then Chase can say, and what we would really like is that this content can be shown in our physical space and row 14, that it's eventually somehow about things that are important to Chase. That is financial wisdom. I'm going to call it wisdom. I don't have a better word. There are better words. I just don't have one. Financial wisdom for our local community, right? So you see how, in my thinking, we identified that we need a physical plant. Chase identified themselves as saying, oh, I have that one. I don't know about curriculum design. I can't give you any money. I don't have any cameras. I wish I did, but I have a big room that you can come and be in. And in return for that, I would like that the content be about financial stuff for the local community, right? The more of those kinds of things we can do, the more we can start to fill in partners, so individual organizations, and then what they can bring and what they can and what they need to get as a result of the bringing, the more we actually have something. Now, clearly, yes, I want to step back like three or 4 minutes. We got nothing if we don't have a curriculum, and a curriculum needs a timeline. And there's, we need teachers and all these kinds of things. But like, think of it that way, right? Like, try and isolate individual, unless I'm way off, please push back on me if you think I'm way off, but I'm trying to build a house and I'm trying to identify the bricks rather than just kind of like painting watercolors of what this house could be.
Right. Well, I want to step up and say that I've actually gotten commitments from teachers, trainers, who can provide a module. As a matter of fact, I've gotten the commitments. I just need to be able, again, have, as Dave said, I need to have the foundation, the house, and the platform for them to speak to. As a matter of fact,
With that said, Kevin, where's the spreadsheet that shows what they can present on? Because that will help us build out the curriculum. So we need to see a visual on what they want to talk about. And then, is this all about what Chase wants, or is this open to other?
Oh, everybody.
Okay, so good.
I mean, I have Chase in here just because I made this spreadsheet an hour after we visited Chase the other day. So it was fresh in my mind. I just use them as examples. If you go along in the spreadsheet, I just have blanks for organization 2, 3, 4, 5, whatever. Anyone can be added, and then every organization should be able to say, oh, I see that I can bring row 8 and then I would like row 10, 12, 15, whatever they are.
I just want to tell you why I asked that, because Citibank has something similar they're doing right now, and it is 100% focused on Citibank's needs and desires. So students are taking Citibank's certification, which is their own internal design that they came up with. And as these students go through something similar to this and take the Citibank certifications, they are then considered somebody that they might bring in in an entry-level position at an X amount of salary. My problem with that is it's only for Citibank. And so unless you're going to stay with Citibank forever, or at least a few years to get that really good foundational training that you need and skill set, then it's worthless if you go to another company, right? So that's why I was asking.
No, that makes sense. I can see that Citibank and Chase don't necessarily want to share a program, and Citibank, the way you just described it, has some very specific what I need it to be's.
Yes.
Right. And so that may preclude a number of other organizations. So that is a great question, just sort of generically, although you brought it up with Citibank. One of the things that I can see by trying to work with something like this spreadsheet, if not actually the spreadsheet, is we can start to see where potential organizations cannot match. Like if let's just keep it simple. One organization says, I need all the content to be blue, but I'll give you whatever you want. And another organization says, I'll give you whatever you want, but all the content has to be red. Okay, we can't do it. We can't make it purple. for both of you guys. In fact, this probably is one or the other. Maybe it's two programs, right? 20 students for each one, or we do one in one quarter and then the next quarter we move to the other one. But that's just an example of how trying to define the bricks and trying to fit the bricks together will also show us places where the bricks cannot fit. And then maybe that turns into other opportunities, right? Hey, we're going to build two houses rather than we're trying to build one house, but it's both a split level and a townhouse at the same time.
Right, we have to figure out the pathway.
Right.
That's-
Well,
Mhm.
I believe one of the things that I've discovered is that the narrative is that I'd like the pathway to be something that would give students who may have never heard this an opportunity to look at entry-level positions within the broad scope of digital media and technology. And that is potentially being an assistant and working a desk for one of these companies. So that at the very level of being able to approach the broadness of digital media and all the other areas of being able to get in, they're going to have to learn and develop skills and being an assistant. So that's why I've asked Ted to be on the call to make sure that some people who've never heard this before as instructors or educators who have very hardwired curriculum may be willing to work themselves as more pliable to allowing people to become open to the idea that they can become assistants at some point.
I have another question. Ted, can you fill us in on some of the skill sets that your clients are looking for at that entry-level position?
Well, they're the skill sets that the universities and colleges are teaching. So it's not much different from, the Microsoft Office to the Excel to, Avid to other programs like that. But if I could just kind of weigh in on some of the things that David was talking about and that Kevin was talking about, and this is just purely my suggestion. I think you build the curriculum on two principles: what the educators are saying that the students need, and also in addition, but not as much, is what the students want. When it comes to your clients, you have Chase and you have Citibank, and they all basically do checking, savings, investments. We don't really know the difference of those two banks, but sometimes you know it subconsciously because we experience when we walk into a Chase, the feel, the look of how we're treated, to when you walk into a Citibank. So when you talk about the studios and networks, Paramount, Warner Brothers, Sony, they all do films. But if you talk to the individuals and the chief executives, they will say, no, we're very different from Paramount. We're very different from Sony. So to me, the biggest challenge we have right now in this nation is that people don't want to go to work and that people don't know how to work. That's the biggest challenge, and the challenge we have right now with the recent college graduates is that they're just clueless. They're clueless to what the work environment is going to require and expect of them. And it's not necessarily that all of them don't want to do it and they're just, arrogant and conceited and entitled. There's a percentage, but it's not that large. They just don't know. And so when they come to me, they're pretending that they know. And so I educate them that this is what the client expects. This is how you need to behave. This is what you do when you're on an interview. And they literally think that the potential client, studio, or network is hiring them for their long-term ambitions. And so they spend 20 minutes on a dissertation talking about their long-term goals that disqualify them from the entry-level position that they're considering them for. So we can teach them all we want, but at some point, we have to get them in a position to get a job. We have to put them in a position that they can be gainfully employed. And how do we effectively do that? Because at the end of the rainbow, that's why everyone's going to college, is to have an education so that they can better themselves in the world financially. So I think it's critical that the students, to some degree, weigh in on what they want. I wouldn't even consider the clients if it was me. To some degree, I wouldn't sit down with Chase because Chase is going to mess up the curriculum. And so Haley and Charlotte, you know better about curriculums than what Chase does. Chase has an incentive for themselves. And like Charlotte said, Citibank is doing all Citibank, and all it's going to do, you're going to live with Citibank. If Citibank doesn't have a position for you, then what good does the certificate do? So we have to be a little bit broader in our thinking. You know, what do we have with these brains that are on this call? And what mentors do we have that we can shape them and prepare them for employment, regardless of what financial institution they're working at or studio or network they're working at?
Okay.
So that's
So
my
you're
input on it.
Microsoft Office Suite. So just so happens I used to work for Microsoft and I still have a lot of work that I do with them. Microsoft is currently offering for students and faculty one-day trainings virtual where they prepare them to take, let's just use the Microsoft Office Suite. They prepare them in each of the different apps. So let's say Word, PowerPoint, Excel for, I think it's 6 to 8 hours a day. Then they give them a certification code. They can go and test out on that free.
Okay.
That's, and then that goes into like artificial intelligence, cloud. It's all of their, or let me just say most of their Microsoft suite, right? Everything they have so much, project management, you name it, CRM. So that's a great tool that we can utilize.
So in a perfect world, I'd say that all of my research in trying to figure out how to get the faculty, students, and anybody else concerned about entry-level positions is how to make them and really design some way for them to be introduced to the Business Information Worker Certificate. But how do we make the digital media, the film student, how do we get them, you know, to buy in that they're going to have to learn some of these administrative software programs? Because some of them just don't know it and they don't see any value for how this is going to help them. So this is really maybe to Haley. Is that something that you've ever heard, Haley, is some pushback from your system being able to convert these people into thinking that they can get better at being an administrative assistant potentially?
A complicated question because I don't know exactly what teachers and career centers are talking about in terms of administrative assistance. And I think that would be a very interesting module to include in this. It's how I got started in my career a long time ago, and it's a very valuable opportunity and could easily be spoken about in that way, but I don't know across the CSUs who is teaching that information. It's something that at the CSUEA, we absolutely encourage the opportunity for. But yeah, it's impossible for me to know exactly what they're talking about in all of the campuses on that end.
So I can speak to our junior colleges and what they're doing. We have a program across the street. It's called the Business Information Worker, and it focuses on a fast track way of certifying students within the Microsoft Office suite. So they'll do 8 weeks of Microsoft Word, PowerPoint, Excel, and then they test out. And that would be through like a Certiport or an industry recognized certification, validation. And then from there, they can either go on to the next level, which would include maybe more in depth. So you become an expert in those fields. So like if you can do pivots and tables on Excel, you can make $50 an hour. There's a lot of gig work for that. So it's just trying to get those that aren't sure what they want to do into employment right away, but at a sustainable living wage. So that's what the BIW worker does. I believe all 19 Los Angeles campuses teach that. A lot of them do it in partnership with some of our nonprofits. So they take a certain amount of students which meet a certain criteria. Usually it's the very low income. A lot of them are foster students that are aging out and need to find something so they don't end up on the streets, things of that nature. You get what I'm saying? And then they work with them and get them ready to get a job within X amount of weeks. And it's very successful. I also think we need to include some type of project management. You need to know how to multitask. And these students just don't. I mean, even my kids, both college students, they don't. No matter what we tell them, right? They don't want to listen. So Any exposure to things like that? I like to use the Scrum Master method, which is more of a fast pace, because that's what businesses are on now. It's all about get it done right, and move on. So anything that we could expose them to and what some of these, what they mean and what the foundation, bottom line understanding of what they'll need to do really helps. And then really have somebody come in and say, look, you're not going to start out as a president, director. You're going to have to work your way up. If they tell you to mop the floor, mop the floor. It's the model, and the students that we're dealing with today, they don't want to do that, right? They've got an idea of what they're going to go do. It's just setting the expectations. You got to pay your dues.
Right. And
Could
what
I,
I'd like to do, because we're running out of time, I think the meeting was about what we can do to get buy-in from individuals here who can see themselves inside of this project and look at what they can bring to the table. But the theme for this, and what I want to offer for everybody, is something we can take this recording and bring it back to Jordan King from JP Morgan Chase, so he can understand what our offering could be if we can streamline what the curriculum, what the ask, and literally what can we look at as the outcome for this project at the end of maybe a year. I wouldn't suspect we could do much in a semester, but try and create some way for us to learn what we need to do to get better at trying to get these students prepared for maybe a internship or a gig or something at the end of the spring semester. So I'm going to offer up now for the floor for anybody to create some suggestions or any action steps so that we can take this recording to JP Morgan Chase. So the floor is open.
I think that one of the other things to consider are the hiring partners in this whole process. Without their participation, it's going to make it very difficult for any kind of interviewing process or, real placement. I think doing some outreach to those partners or potential partners about what they are finding in the marketplace with new candidates or what's missing can help us create a curriculum that's really meaningful for them and for the students to learn, and to get some of those partners' involvement in some of the modular training to hear it directly from them, so that students can really absorb what the business world is like today. What all the things that we're talking about expectation, about what it takes to get involved. But I'm happy to, do some outreach to some of the ad agencies I've worked with, some of the media companies, the digital agencies, to find out what they're looking for in today's environment for candidates, because we can build that into a curriculum. It makes the students that we put in front of them a much better potential candidate for hire than other candidates that they would seek on their own. And I think it adds a lot of credibility. It also gets them involved in, making this successful, because, they're helping to build this whole thing. And I think that it's important to have their full participation.
Right. And again, John, can you introduce yourself? He's one of the new guys on the team. And Charlotte and Terrence, well, not Charlotte. I think, Charlotte, you may have attended the event that John was helping us with the student-generated radio station. John, if you can introduce yourself, you could help us give a little context to what you were saying.
Sure. I'm John Bassinelli, and I've been in media for the past 30 years in sales and sales management. I've built sales organizations and created structures within media companies. I've been able to innovate and recreate organizations in a much better, much more successful infrastructure, create go-to-market strategies. I work directly with clients in creating relationships and development, and have been responsible to generate, hundreds of millions of dollars for clients. And I was working with Kevin to try to put something together that would reintroduce audio to students on the college campus, to show them the value of audio and how it is a legitimate, successful industry where there is an opportunity for them to participate. Unfortunately, the pandemic hit just as we were really starting to put some meat on the bones of that effort. So unfortunately, that stalled that. But I think that there's a lot of value that I can bring, and I want to give back to the community. And I believe that there's a lot of great conversation here, and I'd love to be able to participate.
Okay, well, great. So again, a lot of people have to drop off the call. Dave, do you want to close this out as the call to action here?
Not on mute. I recommend, so again, it's really great to hear everybody's inputs and everything. I recommend that you take some time with the spreadsheet. Feel free to add, comment, fill out your own organization's column, put in questions as the case may be, even add another tab if you want.
One
Let's
tab
consider-
needs to be the mentors and what their level or area of expertise is, so we can start defining the curriculum. So Kevin, I think you've mentioned that you've got a list of people who want to participate in that.
Yeah, I would say add another tab for that, where we can list out mentors and dedicated or committed mentors and the topics that they cover.
Right.
And we can start another tab where we can even start to lay out some basic things, things that should be in the curriculum. Just start throwing some seeds on the ground. Anything like that.
I'll take the curriculum and the self-paced, maybe certification opportunities that we have, and start finding free ones so that everybody will have access. David, we have some great things that we're doing with SMC, which will open up some more opportunities. Hallie, maybe you and I could exchange information and I could share some of those opportunities with you that might help your campus. And I would say, Ted, if you could put a list of things you think that we need to focus on. You had mentioned the Microsoft Office Suite. I'm sure there's a lot of programs students might be able to learn or should know, and I can go out and see if I can find resources to give them training on that, or validate what, at least something to get on their resume.
Right.
And then
I wanted to make an assertion. If we were truly trying to create a smart pipeline of students who are really job ready, Charlotte represents the 28.
Sorry, I have to drop.
Okay, thanks, Dave.
Thank you.
This is really for, again, just the introduction of people on this call who are part of this coalition willing. Charlotte represents 28 community colleges in the LA Orange County region, and Haley represents the 23 campuses of the California State Universities who have digital media career pathways. So this is a huge swath of programs, classes, and campuses that we need to align to some opportunity to recruit these people, the students and faculty that want to participate. We do have some instructors from Cal State Northridge and Cal State LA who are part of this program already. We have some instructors from Santa Monica, from LA Valley, but I think to collate all this stuff is going to be a lot simpler if we can just put everything in the deck that Dave's been able to give us, and then we'll be able to have some consensus as to what we can do as a pilot for JP Morgan Chase. And the idea really is to try to use this deck that Dave's got so that we can submit it to JP Morgan Chase and they can tell us what they think about this. And they may have some ideas of curriculum or speakers that they can bring in that we could agree on that could marry well with how this is going to conclude in something that's going to be better preparing these students to meet people like Ted for mock interviews. So any suggestions, comments on that before we break?
so you keep going back to JP Morgan Chase. Are they funding this?
Well, they are at this point on the table for giving us resources. We haven't created the ask yet. So at this point, if we do decide that we're going to submit something, yes, there will have to be some participation from them to help us with cost of getting, again, transportation. Either it might be equipment, it might be anything. But we have to be able to get the commitment of things that we can get everybody on this call to give us and stack this into the deck.
Okay, so I know we've done this a lot of times. Here are a few of my asks, and I'm gonna be very forward. We need to have a project plan. What is our main goal? Kevin, I need you to define, what is our main goal? Is it, and then present it to us at the next time that we meet. It's really important that we know, are we focusing on JP Morgan Chase and their needs? Which their needs are huge, right? They're everywhere. So that could be more IT, which is what I'm good at. It could be more, entry-level cashiers or cash, whatever, bank tellers. Where is it that we're going with this? Just so that we can define that pathway. Because right now I kind of think we're all over the place and
Yeah,
do this.
let me say that this is a opportunity for JP Morgan Chase to help Dakar and Brown Bag TV.
Why
So,
aren't you on this call?
well, because this call was really designed for us to try to get ourselves together to create a coalition of people who are going to commit to something that we can submit to them. They've been on the call plenty of times. It's now for us to submit something.
Okay,
So
so,
the commitment that I'm looking for is for everybody on the call to submit something to the document that Dave's just outlined for us. So that's really what we're looking for, is to figure out who's going to submit something that we can then take to JP Morgan Chase. See all the players and all the people who are obviously going to do something, as opposed to give us, some suggestions or some ideas. I need commitments.
okay. Perfect. I think we got a lot accomplished today.
So that's what we're looking for. He's looking, I'm having another phone call with about 10 other people who weren't able to make the call today. So we have more trainers, we have more teachers, we have more participants than we have time to be able to put into one program. So what I'm looking for right now are commitments so that we can get a commitment from JP Morgan Chase. And I have other corporate sponsors that I can get a yes or no from, but I have to put everything into a pitch so that we have one place that we can start to create this movement of research.
Start creating spreadsheets.
Well,
We need-
yeah, and I do think that what Dave was trying to do is give us something that was a lot more complex than what I've done before. That's why he wanted him to lead with this suggestion that his document could help us do something more than just meet over and over and over again.
Right. We're all really busy. And so taking advantage of all the talent you have on these calls is very important. All right, I have to drop too. So everyone have a wonderful week, what's left of it, and stay safe.
Okay, great. And again, for anybody else that has any questions, suggestions, we're going to be meeting again tomorrow at 9 o'clock. But this meeting will obviously be more to get JP Morgan Chase information that they can act on. Okay. All right. Thank you, guys.
Good. Thank you.